A lot of people say that they have heroes, people that they admire. They're heroes. They're fantastic. They're great. And whenever somebody says that they have a hero, I tend to think that the person saying that is a fucking idiot. The only people who should have heroes are children. Yeah. And the impulse to make somebody a hero comes from children, from a very natural impulse. You know, children, small children, boys especially, because you'll notice that, see, it's boys who have heroes, girls not really. See, boys have their heroes because they want to find a man older than them, you know, somebody who's, you know, out in the world already, somebody to emulate. And it's quite natural. See, small children, and I see it with my own son, who's 4. He looks up to me and thinks that I'm a hero just by virtue of me being older and bigger, an adult already, whereas he's a child. And he sees me, and sometimes he emulates me. And it's adorable. It's just, it breaks my heart, right? And I look at that, and to him, I can do no wrong. I'm his hero. And that's a lovely, lovely feeling, yeah? But you see, it's natural and right and fine in a child of 4, a child of 10 even. But once you become an adolescent, and let alone get into your 20s, and let alone your 30s, no, you should not have any heroes. No, you can have people that you respect, people you admire even, people that you wish that you yourself can be like them, but you cannot have heroes. Because hero worshipping is blind. You look up to somebody and you hero worship them, whoever it is, you know, some sports figure or a rock star or some famous politician or whomever, it doesn't matter. And what happens is that you wind up idealizing their behavior. You look at them and you look up at them. You look up at them and like, oh, he's so wonderful, right? And of course, he has made good decisions and very bad decisions, like we all do. Whosoever this person that you raise up into a hero, he has very good qualities, and it's those very good qualities that you admire. But that doesn't mean that he's an angel or a saint. It just means that those qualities that you admire have created good results. And those things that you admire, you want to be more like him. But you cannot be blind to the defects of the man. The fact is, it's the defects that make the man. A lot of times, it's the defects, the shortcomings that we have that really define us, and not the heroic things that we manage to do sometimes. Yeah, and that's the truth. But be that as it may, I look at so many young people today, so many young men, and they have heroes. They elevate somebody into a heroic statue, thinking that this person is wonderful and everything that they do is perfect. And because they think that everything that they do is perfect, they are unwilling to look at reality and understand not only this person that they've elevated into a hero, but also understand the things that they actually did and how perhaps what they did was actually not such a good thing. Let me give you an example. When I was young, I admired Winston Churchill. Sure. You know, Winston Churchill had been elevated in the common mythos we have in the Western democracies, in the post-war Western democracies. That, you know, Winston Churchill was this great wartime leader. That's how he was sold to me, and that's what I believed, thoroughly believed, right? And I never really gave it much thought. Until actually, and it embarrasses me to admit this, rather recently, in the last couple of years, I've actually started thinking about Winston Churchill a little bit more carefully. And I read a few books that had vastly different opinions on Winston Churchill. And as a man, as a grown man, I've started to realize something. It's not that Winston Churchill was a hero. Oh no, he was a fucking villain. He destroyed his country. He destroyed the British Empire utterly and destroyed England. He was the cause of the total annihilation of what was once the British Empire, and he gave a mortal wound to what we call today England, which in just a few short decades will cease to be, mark my words, but that's for another video. See? And how is this so? I'm telling you this, but you ask me, well, how is it that he's not a hero? He wasn't the great, we will fight on in the beaches and we'll fight on the shores or blah, blah, blah. How come he's not a great hero? Well, think about it. He went into war against Nazi Germany, right? He declared war against Nazi Germany in September 1939 after the Nazis had invaded Poland, right? Everybody looking at the situation understood very clearly what was going on. The Nazis and the Soviets were getting ready to go to all-out war. That was the inevitable direction where things were going. The Nazis and the Soviets came to the Non-Aggression Pact where they divvied up Poland. Because it wasn't just that the Nazis invaded Poland. The Soviets also invaded Poland and took over the eastern half of Poland. Yeah. But see, Winston Churchill, because of his anti-German hysteria, a psychological problem that Churchill had, a hatred for German culture and everything that had to do with Germany, which is, by the way, quite weird because he himself was part German, and people tend to forget that, and I think that he himself hated that about himself, but be that as it may, he went to war with the Nazis, but not the Soviets. In fact, he allied himself with the Soviets. Yeah, he allied himself with the Soviets. And what you call it, even though the Soviets had done the same thing that the Nazis had done, which was invade Poland. These two countries ripped Poland apart. And Winston Churchill, instead of realizing that what was going to happen was that the Nazis and the Soviets were going to go to war and it was going to be a war of mutual annihilation, and the smart thing was to step back and get out of the way of these two, what did he do? He declared war on Nazi Germany and allied himself with the Soviets. And what happened because of this? Well, because, see, the Soviets, with British help and then later American help, were able to defeat the Nazis. And because of this, the Soviets conquered half of Europe. They enslaved half of Europe. And in point of fact, not only did the Soviets, because of this decision by Churchill to support the Nazis and ally himself with the Soviets enslaved half of Europe. And the British Empire bankrupted itself fighting the Nazis for no gain whatsoever. From the point of view of the United Kingdom, the war of 1939 to 1945 was a suicidal war because there was nothing to be gained. Nothing to be gained for the British Empire or for the United Kingdom or for England. Winston Churchill killed his own country. And that's the truth about Winston Churchill. Sorry to go off on this little rant about it, but it's really interesting because, you see, for the longest time I admired Winston Churchill. And hell, there have been a whole boatload of movies that are basically hagiographies of Winston Churchill about how wonderful he was. But if you start thinking about it and remove the blinders of hero worship, you start to realize that what Winston Churchill did was evil. He was a truly evil man. He sacrificed his nation, the flower of the youth of the United Kingdom. He sacrificed the British Empire, which was actually a force for good and was a great stabilizing influence in a lot of unstable places. He sacrificed the British Empire for a pointless war to satisfy his own ego. Because if you start to read about Winston Churchill, you realize quite quickly that he had an insanity about war. He loved war. War with whomever. Winston Churchill was the man who, for all intents and purposes, invented concentration camps in the Boer War at the turn of the 19th century. Winston Churchill was First Lord of the Admiralty and a key player insofar as the First World War. And many people have said that he incited many of the policies of the Brits during the First World War. Winston Churchill, as I explained before, got into a war where he had no business going into war because he loved war. He loved it. He loved the fact of butchery and murder. He was a crazy man. He was a crazy man who loved war and hated the Germans. And he went to war twice with the Germans. Huh? That's how insane he was. And you can see that if you realize that you cannot worship a man as a hero. You have to judge him. And that's the point. The people who hero worship are people who are afraid of judgment. And I've said before in other videos, see, in our current culture, the whole notion of judgment, of making a moral determination, is anathema. You cannot make a moral determination. No judgment, no judgment. Everybody can do whatever the fuck they want, right? And because of this moral fear, moral terror of making a judgment, you wind up with a populace who worships people as heroes instead of judging them by their words and judging them by their actions. A lot of people, for instance, nowadays worship Trump, right? Instead of looking at the man for what he actually does, yeah? Not what he says. I mean, I don't believe in paying attention to anything that anybody says. I think that you should pay attention to what they actually do. But no, you have people who worship Trump and who say that he's a great thing, blah, 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 great president or whatever, and worship the man, yeah? Or there are others who worship, I don't know, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Bernie Sanders, or whoever the fuck they admire. They admire them in a childish way. Because the fact is, if we live in a society where you are not allowed to judge, then it's inevitable that you are going to worship the people whom you perceive to be on your side. You're going to worship them as heroes uncritically and accept whatever they say or do uncritically. And you're only going to say, oh, well, he's my hero. I admire him so much, so I'm not going to say anything. Yeah? That's what happens when you remove judgment from your moral matrix. You wind up hero worshiping people as opposed to looking at what they do like an adult and judging them. And that's what you have to do. You have to judge people. Yeah? You have to judge people and let the chips fall where they may. And there are a lot of people that you might think of as heroes, but if you remove the blinders of your hero worship, you'll see that they're not very good, or actually, like in the case of Churchill that I went into at length, excuse me, you'll discover that they're not heroes. No, they were awful men. See? Hero worshiping blinds you. It keeps you from seeing reality. It keeps you from seeing the truth. It keeps you from seeing painful truths. Because ultimately that's what we want to avoid. We want to avoid painful truths. It's all good and fine to talk about easy truths. Oh, the sky is blue, a square has four sides. Those are painless truths, right? But realizing that some political leader that you'd been taught to admire for decades, you start to realize that he's actually the villain of the movie, right? Or not even a villain, an incompetent buffoon, an incompetent psychotic buffoon who gave pretty speeches. That really changes you now, doesn't it? Yeah. You should not hero worship anyone. You can admire them, you can respect them. Admire them, not them in toto, but rather admire specific things that they have done. But you cannot worship a man. I mean, apart from it being pagan, right? It's not healthy because it keeps you away from the truth. It blinds you to the truth. Now, why did I do this video? Well, because I actually got in succession 2 emails from fans. And on the one hand, both of them said practically the same thing, which was really fucking shocking. They both said that I was their hero. Yeah? And it was incredibly flattering. Yeah? Incredibly flattering that these 2 young men, strangers, I actually don't have any idea where they live, but out there, these 2 young men think that I'm a big hero. And it's flattering, of course. I mean, I'd be a liar if I said it wasn't. But the thing is, see, I realized how dangerous it is. How dangerous and stupid and foolish it is to believe that somebody's a hero. I mean, I'm flattered, but I'm no hero. No. I just articulate things, not very well, that a lot of people are thinking. That's it. That's all I do. And I do that, not very well, but well enough that a lot of people agree. And that's why I have the channel I have and what have you, right? But to say that I'm a hero, oh no, that's very dangerous. That's exceedingly dangerous. When you say that somebody's your hero, you're basically giving them carte blanche to do whatever foolishness they can think of. You're basically saying, here, go ahead, do whatever you want, and you have a license because I'm not going to judge you. You're a hero. Therefore, anything you do is fine by me. That's a fucking dangerous notion. That's so fucking dangerous. Yeah. Now, why am I bringing this up? Well, here are my thoughts. No fooling around. We're moving into a really dangerous period in our political life in the Western democracies. And I'm not fucking around when I say this. What's happening is that we are rapidly polarizing. I mean, that's not news, right? We're going to find ourselves with leaders who will come to the fore of the two sides of this polarization. And on both sides, we're going to see leaders rise up or be elevated, as the case may be, and people will start to hero worship them. And you got to pay attention to this. Because these guys who are going to be elevated on both sides of the political equation, these people will get drunk on their power. And they are going to do things, nasty shit. I mean, just really evil crap. And it's going to be on both sides. Not just the leftists. No, it's also going to be on the right. Don't fool yourself. Not Trump. Trump is too much of a buffoon to really take up this mantle. But the guy after him. They're going to be elevated by their followers. And they're going to be hero worshipped. And they're going to be the potential future dictators, at least in the United States. Because we're living in a very weird period. We are seeing the beginnings of the end of the Western democracies. We are going to be moving towards a totalitarian regime. It will be much like the Soviet regime. It will try to pretend to be democratic, but it won't. It will be authoritarian. It will be a police state. The only question is, who is going to rule it? If it's going to be on the right or the left. But that totalitarian state, for all intents and purposes, already exists. But we are lacking at this time an individual who has the strength of will to grab the reins of this totalitarian power that has been accumulated and centralized in the Western democracies and start wielding it, start driving that power in the direction that they want. There was a national security guy a few years ago who said that the United States was a turnkey totalitarian state. It was ready to go. The NSA programs, the spying programs and what have you, domestic spying, the CIA assassination projects and all the rest of it, it's all in place. It just requires a hero to rise up and take control of this turnkey totalitarian state. So I'm telling you, pay attention to anybody who's worshipped as a hero. Pay attention. Because that's what's coming.